All right. We've at least got a quorum now, so call the committee of the whole meeting for March 14th to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Stralchuk, Alderman Bushy, Alderman Meyer,
Here.
Alderman Hancher,
Here.
Alderman Garrow, Alderman Parrish,
Here.
Alderman Schneider, Alderman Gebhardt is absent, and Mayor Nurbin. Okay,
He's on his way. Yeah.
he's away.
I am here. First up, we have approval of the meeting minutes from February 14th. Motion and a second. Any comments, questions, corrections? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. First up, we've got a series of 4 ordinances. So the first up is ordinance 2023-1640, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to building and site plan requirements for properties located in the town center and rival corridor zoning districts. Looks like Assistant Director Zader is going to give us a quick overview of each of these, and we'll ask if he's got any questions. They're all pretty straightforward, but we wanted to get these in front of you now before we vote on them next month. Their first readings this month will be up for action next month, so if there's any questions, we can get them out of the way now so we can take any corrective action if necessary by next month. Try and keep the process in a straight line. Pardon? We're discussing them here in Committee of the Whole, not at Council because they're first readings. Yes. Take it away, Jack.
This is a change to our rival corridor in our town center zoning district to allow for us to require changes that we typically would see with public improvements that the city would make. But since our last expenditure period ends in April, and we spent all of our money on our current project, there's going to be no funding left for these other improvements. So this just basically puts it on the developer. This would include any street lighting, on-street parking, street trees, landscaping, bike racks, things like that. So this will be both in the town center and the rival corridor district.
Does that make sense to everyone? The ability to spend TIF money is coming to an end, so someone's got to pay for the improvements when there's development in an area. So that's basically the essence of this. Yes, I've got the push to talk. Everyone else has to keep their finger put down. Yeah. My finger was getting tired because I end up doing a lot of the talking. Are there any questions on this item? For a formal recommendation, I don't know that we need to. These went through Planning Commission, but we wanted to get them in front of council to talk about them.
This one does need one because it did not go through a standing committee.
Oh, it did not. Okay, we need a formal recommendation on this.
Move to recommend.
Motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's recommended to the council. Next up is ordinance 2023-1641, ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to turf grass height limits during the month of May, otherwise known as No Mow May. We're still going to have May, we're just not going to enforce grass
Yeah, we
clipping.
changed the date, so we would not start enforcing the 8-inch grass limit until June 1st, basically, to allow people to take part in No Mow May without any repercussions.
And we're unlikely to have any 8-inch mowing violations because we typically don't have grass growing that high anyway by then. So likely to be very little impact. Are there any, Alderman Boucher?
It's not a question. It's more, I had an exchange this morning with Mike Geis on this and asking for research just to make sure that we're not doing this just to feel like we're doing something and not results. So he did send me an article that pointed to some research about bee populations actually being increased in areas with the flowering. And actually, for myself, my kids have moved out, so I would like to have this all summer, but that's not going to work. So I did get that feedback from him. And the other thing, actually, in the exchange points highlighting in here, it's not just not mowing, but the recommendation is also not the treatment, because having the treated grass does not help the bee population as a result. So it kind of, not that that's part of the ordinance here, but it's part of the recommendation.
Thank you for that. This is to help the local bee population and have them survive a little better. Bees are dwindling in numbers, and if we don't have bees, we actually don't eat. So Thank you for that. Alderman Schneider.
Yeah, I just think we should maybe put out some educational information to Alderman Boucher's point that because I don't think people necessarily know that pesticides, herbicides on their clover or dandelions makes them kind of toxic to bees. So I think maybe in the bulletin we'll just highlight that we are made this change and implications for using herbicides. So.
I'm sure we'll get something out in the newsletter, and I'm sure we'll link some research on the topic. We're certainly not the first community to consider it. There was a few people last year wanting to try and do it, but it was very last minute in a manner which we couldn't get it in front of the right number of committees, like a week before where they wanted it to be implemented. This year we're out in front of it. Alderman Strelchak.
Just, I was at a tree board meeting last night, and they're looking to get informational materials out to residents as well via the newsletter, brush permits, as well as Arbor Day. So those are 3 areas that we could include this information just to provide a little insight. And just a little personal note is I participated in No Mow May, unbeknownst to my wife, until the end of the month. And I told her I did that, and now I can tease her and tell her it's an ordinance, even though it's just allowed.
Whatever it takes. Is there? Well, we don't need a formal recommendation.
This one we do not, because it did go to public welfare.
So we'll get to vote on it next month. But sounds like everyone's in general support of the idea. If you think of anything by the time next month rolls around, please don't hesitate to contact staff ahead of the meeting. So next up, we have ordinance 2023-1642, ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code regarding required setbacks and offsets for properties located within the city's R2 2-acre zoning districts.
Yes, this came out of a case that went to Board of Appeals. Our R2 zoning district was unique in the sense that it had a 75-foot front setback requirement for every type of road that it fronted. And every other zoning district except our R1 had a different setback based on the classification of the road. So all we're doing here is changing that to match all the other zoning districts. And then there was an offset requirement. Our offset requirement in our 5-acre zoning is 30 feet. Then it drops to 25 feet. And then for some reason it went back up to 30 feet for this district. So we just changed that to match the 25 feet of the R1B. Everything else is remaining the same.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this change? This too went through Planning Commission and everyone was supportive of it.
And public
Planning
welfare.
Commission and public welfare?
Yes.
Good to know. Okay. 2 committees looked at this. All right. Hearing no feedback on that item, we'll move on to 1643, an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Mequon Municipal Code, updating references to and requirements of applicable administrative code provisions related to building permits.
Yes, this went to actually public welfare this evening. These are changes that the state requested to our municipal code to match the language they would like to see. Most of it is just, again, it's referencing certain code or changes or naming changes. Like, for example, we refer to the Department of Commerce. It's now Safety and Professional Services. There's really no content that is changing anything in terms of how we do business. It's more just updating our code to match what the state is looking for.
Thank you. Are there any questions on that item? Also very straightforward. All right. I think, we'll get to vote on these later at council, but next month, maybe one of them tonight.
Yeah, this one we would like to suspend the rules
This one
on.
we're going to see if there's someone who wants to suspend the rules. I think there's some urgency surrounding this item. But we'll take that up as the common council later. Before we leave that, Alderman Strelchak has a question.
Just to circle back to the No Mow May one. Do we want to suspend the rules and maybe vote on that one tonight as well, just so we can get literature out?
We can't because it's a Chapter 58, so it requires public hearing next month. So we timed it so we still have enough time to get it done before the May begins. But yeah, we can't do anything with that.
Yeah, we'll be able to get that out middle of next month. And with any luck, we'll still have snow then. It is Wisconsin after all. Okay, moving on to our discussion items. First up, we've got concept street design plans for Port Washington Road located in tax increment districts 4 and 5.
So I have Luke Haas here from Harwood Engineering. We're going to talk about our concept plan. I will pull it up on the screen for you. Before I turn it over to Luke, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of background on how we got to this point. We've been working on this for about a year and a half. This went through Economic Development Board and then on to the ad hoc committee that was chaired by former Mayor Worth and a number of citizens of the community with development experience. We did approve a $24,000 contract with Harwood back in April of 22. So what I have on the screen, and Luke will go over this in more detail, but this is the concept plan that the ad hoc committee approved. There's basically 4 different sections of emphasis that they looked at. Number one is treatments to the intersection. So as you can see at any signalized intersection, including Mequon and Easttown and Dungeness Bay, there's a treatment of that intersection with a stamped asphalt product. And Luke, again, can get into more details with that as we go forward. The second item was light fixtures. One of the biggest bang for a buck the committee thought was changing out the light fixtures from basically Mequon Road to County Line. And so there's a fixture shown on the last page, I believe. So there'll be this fixture right here. For the medians, this would be a double arch, and then we're also adding lights on each side of the sidewalk on each side of the road. Right now, the uniformity out there is pretty bad. There's a lot of dark spots, and then there's like very bright spots at the intersection. It's not really safe for pedestrians or vehicles. So this will help kind of make that uniformity ratio kind of a little bit more what you would see on a typical roadway. The third thing we looked at is median treatments. There's a number of different median hierarchy plans that we have, and we'll go through those specifically and how we achieve those, how we got to those, what medians we chose, and how we got to those different designs. And then finally, there's a couple of median modifications. The first one is at the intersection with Mequon Road, where you turn into Culvers, and I'll show you some drawings later on how that impacts the neighboring properties. And then there's the one at Dungeness Bay on the north side of the street along Port Washington Road, and then one on the south side as well. And I'll touch base with those after Luke gives his presentation. We did those for several different reasons. One is just a safety issue. The one off of Mequon Road and the one on the north side of Dungeness Bay Road, where it had some moderate accident history to them. And they also helped create larger islands that would create more landscaping, and it would also help with our lighting pattern throughout the corridor. And I'll touch again after Luke is done. I'll kind of give you examples on where these are in more detail. So with that, I'll turn it over to Luke, and he can kind of give you a snapshot on how we got to this point with the plan itself.
Hello, everybody. You hear me good? So I'll give a rundown of, as Jack said, the process that we went through to come up with these final concepts, including site analysis, the ad hoc committee ideas, and then the designs. Is that better? Yeah. So to perform the site analysis, we took multiple visits out to the site, observed what types of patterns were out there, both vehicular and pedestrian, and found that a lack of pedestrian traffic is in this corridor. We looked at whether or not to convert this or add pedestrian measures, but came to the conclusion that this is more of a vehicular corridor. You aren't going to get somebody parking on one end and walking to the other. We looked at the abundance of utility poles that run along the west side of the corridor, talked about ideas to mitigate those, but ended up, that's just a massive project that was outside of this scope at this time. So we have design solutions to kind of combat those poles and to try take away from them so they're not as visually impeding. We looked at the abundance of signs throughout the corridor. There are a lot of street signs. Those medians are filled with right turn, left turn, basic traffic signs that really clutter it up. And if we can, with this design, minimize the impact of those and draw attention away from those instead of the medians being turf and signs. There's 2 different types of lights throughout this corridor, so there's different types of light bulbs in different fixtures. As Jack said, that was a big point for this project, was to create more uniform light levels throughout this corridor, and if we replace those fixtures with LED fixtures, that's going to give us better light levels throughout the whole corridor. Yeah, we have as Jack mentioned, the 2 major intersections, and then we identified one minor intersection at Easttown. and we played off of those, and the designs will show where we implemented the crosswalk sections. From the ad hoc committee, there were a few different major ideas that came out of it. So they wanted plantings, but not too many to maintain. So that was a big factor of this whole thing, was who's going to maintain it and how is it maintained. So we looked at that throughout the whole design and kept that in the back of our mind to make sure that it wasn't a burden on the city to take over this maintenance, because right now all the areas are just lawn, so somebody goes in and mows them. So anything that we did to it, being able to maintain and still look attractive in 5-10 years. Hardscaping was a good option that came out of our meetings, and you'll see in the designs, it wanted some signage features, kind of an identifier, sense of place. Talked about the light levels, and then maintenance again with snow and how we were going to address the winter months with anything that we do in those medians. Overall, it was to improve the lighting, give this corridor a sense of place, tie it all together. So when you enter this area, you're familiar. We're at Port Washington Road, and that signage hasn't been determined yet, but we've gotten the feel that you'll know where you are once you enter the corridor. And then we'll work from south to north. So we started at Zedler Lane with, you want to go to that first plan?
Page, was it?
Yeah, one more down. Okay, so this is the southern edge of the treatments to the medians. As part of the site analysis, we identified that the larger medians had a lot of opportunity, whereas the terrace on the side was inconsistent, and most of them were pretty narrow, where to do any sort of feature, and that would be tough without modifying the sidewalks on both sides. So this is we have these main entry features here and at north, or at the Mequon Road intersection. The center, there's an entry feature, which you'll see in that center 3D image. And then we have the decorative concrete on the outer edges with plantings in the middle. And that concrete not only adds interest to these medians, but it also lowers maintenance as far as bed edging, snow plowing. It gives the plantings a buffer from all the salt spray. And we've tied that out throughout the corridor, that same theme. We have the decorative concrete and plantings, and then multiple elements that we add to those themes, including trees and planters. So these are the entry feature islands, and then as we head north, we continue that theme with the plantings and the decorative pavement, but also adding movable planters and pots that you can have plants in the summer. Those can also be changed out for winter interest. They do a lot with evergreens and even the birch tree branches, and also lighting too at night during holiday seasons too. Then we move further north. This is the Donges Bay intersection, and this is where we have entry features on a slightly smaller level that are fit into these medians. So the median treatments are a little bit different because of the size that was available. So instead of having turf on the edges of these, there's just the decorative pavement with plantings and trees, and then the rhythm follows with the entry feature element at both the north and south of Donges Bay. And then one more, this is the first time we see the stamped asphalt crosswalks, and that was, we wanted a treatment in the roadway as sort of a delineator. As you progress, you can still feel that you're on this. You're in this corridor by those crosswalk treatments. But a concern was given if they were concrete or a different material than asphalt. So that's where we came up with this stamped asphalt product, and they are available this spring. We ran out of time and the weather was a little bit colder, but the company is willing to do a test sample so that we can see what it's actually going to look like before these are installed. And now we're getting into the middle of the corridor where there's residential, is multifamily on both sides. This is the area where there's the most residential. And with this treatment, we're doing more trees, more of a buffer. So these are like bigger groves where the trees are clumped together. And the ground plane is simply that decorative concrete with a stone base. Again, going back to the maintenance, but still adding interest to these large medians. And similar, so we're in the center, so there's two of these larger islands, and then we start to go back to the repetition of that we had at the southern edge, where we're getting the turf and then the pavement and then the plantings. So as you can see, we come from the entry feature, move into the, I guess, the mid block where it's a little less intensive with the design elements, and then it's to the groves. And I'll also mention at this point too, you can see not great, but the lighting pattern. So the rhythm is there's two lights on the terrace, and then we go into the center. So we have two lights in the terrace, and then there's one in the center, and then we jump back out to the terrace, and one taller fixture in the center, and then we follow that rhythm throughout the entire corridor. So it's not as it exists now, where the lights are just placed at the ends of each median, and in a random pattern. We'll have a consistency and a rhythm throughout this whole corridor, where the side fixtures will have the opportunity of banners or signage as well. And those will they'll be shorter, so the middle double arms will be taller, and then the terrace light poles will be slightly shorter on the outside. And now we're getting up to Mequon Road, where we have another main entry feature design. The islands were a little bit more broken up here, so we don't have the long one, but we still got that same design feel as you enter into Port Washington on the Port Washington Road corridor. And this is also the area where Jack mentioned earlier that the medians would be modified to reduce traffic confusion. I'm sure we all know, getting into that Culvers, there's a lot of different ways you can turn left from Port Washington Road and right. So if we can limit that to one major intersection there with an additional left turn lane coming south, we feel that'll help the traffic patterns.
And I can give you a detail if you're interested in looking at it in terms of what that'll look like. So I'll pull up so this is basically as you're going down Port Washington Road. Currently, you would turn into Culvers through here. This will be now closed off, so you'd have to come in through here and enter, or you could actually probably do a U-turn if you felt more comfortable. But this would just extend that drive a little bit longer for the people that are going southbound. If you want to look at the ones to the further south, I can give you an example for the south. This is for the Clark gas station. So, and these have these median rumble strips in currently, so these would be closed off. So currently, if you're going northbound into Clark, you would turn in through here. Now you would have to come up through this way and kind of enter through the Dundas Bay access point. And the same would be the case, obviously, for the Baymont as well. That would cut off their access going southbound. And then the third one is the so this is for Crave and Goodyear, basically, in Life Storage. So if you're coming northbound to Crave currently, you can come and turn and go over the rumble strips. Now you'd have to come and turn here and enter this way. And then the same with if you're going towards Goodyear, you'd have to go this way and then come up or go around to the back. So we did send a letter out to all the neighboring properties to let them know that their potential changes are occurring. If they have any questions, reach out to me. I did speak with the owner of the Clark gas station who had some concerns. But I did put all these in there for the different properties in your packet just for your review. Other than that, I guess the only thing else we'd want to talk about is the cost. Basically we have about $1.3 million currently in our TIF 4 and TIF 5 districts in cash. We're looking at an estimate of about $1 million for this project. This is also, as many of you know, this is a county road, so there'd have to be a MOU with the county in terms of maintenance. Our DPW director, who I believe is here, she estimated this would probably add about $69,000 a year in cost for maintenance. So we'd have to kind of figure out how we'd handle that. The TIF could afford covering that for a number of years, but then we'd have to look at a long-term strategy going forward. Other than that, the committee also did recommend an additional welcome sign. I put the location in your packet. That would be on a median that's not currently there. This would be part of the Mequon Road interchange project. There'll be a median just east of the bridge. They felt that a nice welcome entranceway sign there would be appropriate as well. And as Luke mentioned, they did state that while this project wouldn't be able to handle the $15 million cost of the burial, they felt it was still a worthy endeavor, and the council should look at it moving forward. So at this point, we're just looking for feedback on the concept plan so we can further refine them. And we'd bring it back at a later date with a final plan based on your comments and feedback.
Thank you. Before we get into comments from the council, is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak about this item or came here for this item that cares to make a comment? Yep. Please just come up to the podium and state your name and the property you're representing and share your feedback.
Hi, I'm Jawad Ahmad. I operate the Clark gas station. I was just concerned about this median treatment or median extension that we're gonna have and how that will affect our traffic flow. You know, we've been at that Clark gas station for several decades, and I know that, you know, closing that south entrance is gonna be very difficult for the store. I could easily project 20% decrease in the volume at that store because of this. So that was one of my concerns, is that if we could keep that rumble area open, or at least have one of the Port Washington entrances open versus having to go on Donjas Bay and coming in.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak on any of these changes to the proposed changes to the roadway? Okay, just want to make sure that there's no one waiting out in the audience waiting to speak. Go ahead, Alderman Strelchak.
I'll hold my thumb on the button. I got a bunch of questions. First one, to address Clark's concern. I'm never a proponent of closing off entrances to existing businesses, so I'm in a position where I would object to that location and, you know, look closely at the bank and the culverts. I think the culverts is a traffic challenge as it is right now with people turning into there, so I can see the mitigation of a safety concern there by altering the median when you have the opportunity. But, you know, what is the real driver for the Clark location, for my first question?
Sure. If you look at the map, the driver is to extend this median to give it a little bit more green space, and then to keep the rhythm pattern for the lighting, you'll need to have a lighting fixture in this location. So, and again, we're not closing off the access point. What we would do is extend the median further so that if they were entering, they could come in through here. I mean, they do have an access point here, which is also remaining. So there is, I guess, the ability to turn in here off this left turn lane. Probably wouldn't be advisable because I'm sure people would be confused on whether they're turning left here or turning here. But basically, the median would just be extended here. So if you're still going this direction, you can come in through this way, but it would cut off the northbound access to get into this location here. And again, that was to increase the size of this median, and it was also, again, a safety issue. We looked at all three of these rumble strip areas because they're kind of like no man's lands. And this one was probably, from what the police chief told me, it was the safest of the three. The other two had a little bit of a moderate accident history with those. But that was the intent of extending that median.
Okay, so for the record, I'm objecting to this change.
Okay.
Because you're not closing off the access coming southbound on Port Washington Road, but you are closing off the access coming from northbound. And I'm not, as a driver, going to turn onto the street into, because I'm gonna turn left onto Donjas Bay to get in there. And while I'm turning left, I'm going to have a green light, and everyone there is going to have a red light, and I'm going to have to turn through traffic to get into that. You know, I drove into the Ace parking lot for years, and, you know, as I'm coming in there, that's always a challenge to get in. They had another entry a little further down where I could sweep in, but I think we're doing a disservice to the business there, and I'd like the city to, you know, just really kind of take an opportunity to review that. The second question that I had was regarding the street trees. As Mike Gees reviewed the plan, and he's in agreement with the amount of gravel / asphalt with the types of trees that are being proposed, and they're going to actually live there.
Yes, I think he's okay with the species selection. I mean, his concern mostly was maintenance because they're gonna have to maintain them and make sure that, you know, there's additional cost to that. But in terms of the species selection and design, he was okay with it. Yes.
Okay. And then I had a question on the stamped concrete. as a motorcyclist, when I'm turning left and I'm at speed kind of at an intersection and it's slightly wet out, I'm concerned about that being a different surface and potentially slippery. What have you gotten for feedback on that?
So this is actually stamped asphalt, not concrete, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why we went with the asphalt, because a lot of the problems we've seen with stamped concrete and asphalt mixing, you're gonna get a bump there or it's slippery. The stamped asphalt allows us to put a design in there as well, and it's a relatively new product around here, so that's why we were hoping that we'd get a test, sample out in our DPW lot. There is some, I think the Third Ward has an intersection that uses it. I don't know if Luke has any more to say about the quality or the.
Yeah, the manufacturer stands by their product, and they have the slip coefficients and ratios. I don't have them on hand now, but that could be something we would provide in the future.
Yeah, the slip coefficients would be one thing that I'd look for, and then manufacturer warranty and repair cost as it's related to stamped asphalt. I don't know how that works. A utility comes through and needs to dig up something, we got to replace it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the good thing about this is they can do it on new or existing asphalt. So they actually heat it up with their presses, and then they either dye it and then press, or just dye it. So it works better on new asphalt, but in all cases they can do it on each asphalt. So it is not the cost of replacing concrete if you have to go underneath it. It's the asphalt and then the re stamping and surfacing of it.
Okay, and then my last question is on the stone features. I didn't see what was proposed to be on there for decorative art. I saw some kind of artistic rendering on there, and that's worrisome to me. My worry is that we're gonna be like, oh, how much did you spend to erect a tombstone in the median? So first glance, I'm not loving it in general at all, but open for listening.
The concept was approved, so design details to be determined yet. We haven't figured out exactly what's going to be on that sign or how it's lit up, and whether it's internally illuminated, and how much that stone is actually, how high that goes. And do you know if that's comes with another approval?
Well, again, that's up to this is why we're bringing it forward to the council, just to see if you had some positive or negative reaction to anything, and if you want to see it again, final detail. I know the committee kind of struggled on what to put on there. Some of them just wanted to say City of Mequon over and over again, and leave it at that. And some felt we should do something a little bit more branding way, but they didn't want to spend a lot of time on it as well. So there wasn't a clear consensus on what the language should be on those features.
Okay, and then there's two conflicting statements here. It goes from Mequon Road to Zedler, or Mequon to County Line.
Well, the majority of the stuff will be to the Zedler. Yeah, we looked at the whole corridor, but the DOT is doing work right now all the way to County Line, so we didn't really look at anything really south of Zedler, but the whole project area was considered up down the County Line.
And then we're looking at continuing this north at least to Glen Oaks at some point.
At a later date.
I know this is the TIF, and this is, don't say no to improvements, right?
Correct.
But it's kind of a business district is that port corridor, so it should all feel the same.
Yeah, we could do it. I mean, in fact, with the TIF, you can go a half mile outside the boundary of the TIF, so you could actually still use TIF dollars to do north of Mequon Road, but you can only go about a half mile, which may get you to Glen Oaks or pretty close to it. It's just a matter of how much cash available we have.
I think Glen Oaks is a full mile.
Yeah, it might not get you all the way there, but it'll get you part way.
I'd like to consider going north a half mile.
Maybe at least a little way up the road. Alderman Garrell.
First thing I'd like to say is I'm 100% in agreement with Mr. Strelchek's assessment of the Clark Station. That's a convenience store. Just by making it inconvenient for people to come in there, will probably drop their business by 20, maybe more, probably more than 20%. I mean, if you're driving down the road and McDonald's on the right, you'll go in. If it's on the left, you'll go to the next one. And there are no accidents on that side. There really aren't any accidents. That's not a problem accident side. This could be made to look really nice and still not cut off the access to the Clark Station.
Thank you. And I think I saw Alderman Meyer's hand up earlier.
Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. For signage on there, for the entranceway. I know we want to have a sense of place for that corridor, but I think what we have to do, and which I would like to see, is some kind of coordination that that same type of signage is going to be incorporated around the city. And what I mean, whether it's going to be color wise and the signage can be different color wise or the same type of theme for it. Um, Instead of having these little pockets around that, they all look kind of different, you want to have them have a place and have them unique, but still have some kind of incorporation with the city. Whether it's, if you're using flower pots, whether it's the same colored flower pots at the town center as you're using there. So it gives that sense where everybody knows, yeah, you're in Mequon, but this is a unique place in Mequon. So if you had it that way, like colored with the pots or with the signage or something like that, I think that would add to the whole, coordination for the whole city that in doing that.
Thank you. Good comments. Alderman Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the Ad hoc Design Committee. I sat on some of those meetings. Excellent, well thought out discussions. Former Mayor Worth was on it. And he was really into this whole thing. And so thank you to Mayor Worth and, of course, to staff as always. I guess my main point about this whole thing, I'm still kind of grappling with the whole project, mostly because we've really had a golden era of spending and project planning over the last few years. We have the new highway with the ramps and sidewalks, Highland Road, new interchange, the ARPA money, which of course isn't technically our money that we're spending, but that's $3.8 million that we'll be spending over the next couple of years. At the last meeting, we approved $5.3 million in TIF spending in the town center TIF. And I completely stand behind that spend. We are following through on a promise made to business owners that we made long ago. And I think there was really a clear return on investment. And when I said in the committee meeting, when I said to the committee, is like, you really need to kind of show what is the return on investment to the community. I don't know that this will trigger additional development. It will look nicer, for sure. This is a unique opportunity in the sense that we're not taking out any debt. So that's really what I like about this and why I think I can get Cokes to go along with this. I am concerned about the $70,000 in annual maintenance. I'm wondering how much of that was for like the pottery and the shrubs. Because if there was anything in this plan that I could probably live without, it would probably be all of the flowers and pottery and artwork. I don't even necessarily need to know right now, Director Lundin. I'm just saying for when you guys come back, I'm wondering if we take some of that stuff out, what would the design be? Like, would you put more trees there, which might be acceptable? Kind of like Mequon Road. At the next meeting, when you bring this back, the Ellers projections, I think you just kind of got to show the spend and when the spend will be and try to articulate what will happen. I mean, will this lead to more tax base? And what I'd really like to hear is from residents and businesses, because I don't want to hear after the fact that we've been on this spending spurge when, quite honestly, the source of funds isn't taxpayer dollars for a lot of this stuff, including this TIF. This is not coming out of any taxpayer dollars. Again, the money is sitting there ready to be spent. So I do want the public to feel like they have the opportunity to weigh in and comment on any concerns. Ultimately, though, this is probably a opportunity for the next several decades to do something. Otherwise, we'd have to come off the general rule. So I'm trying to get to yes. I question some of the parts of it. So I just wanted to kind of express how I was feeling to my colleagues. I want to keep the conversation going. As it relates to the Clark gas station, that is in my district. I do feel 3 curb cuts is quite a bit. I'd rather remove the one closest to the intersection where you might have cars dumping out into the intersection. But if you're going to redirect traffic onto Donjas Bay Road, that's actually more of a hazard. You have Donjas Bay Elementary School there. At the end of the road, you just have a lot of traffic on that road. So those would be my comments. And again, I really want to thank the ad hoc committee and staff for this creative project for our community.
I'm going to jump in and I'll get to you in a second. Alderman Bushy. Before I became mayor, I had the pleasure of serving both districts 7 and 8 for a combined total of 10 years. And one of the more frequent comments I heard throughout that time was, when is Mequon going to do something for the east side? You're putting all your effort into town center, but we're sitting over here and things look tired and old. And so there is a general desire to have this part of town freshened up, and I think it deserves it. It's also with those new freeway interchanges at Mequon Road and now at Port Washington Road with the full interchange. This is the entranceway to all of Mequon from Mequon's east side. So when you get off the freeway now, you see stuff that's 20, 30 years old. It looks a little tired and run down, and you're like, well, this doesn't look that nice, really. Well, maybe I'll keep driving, and you'll find town center eventually, and it's going to look really awesome in another year. It'll just been refreshed. I think it'd be a really missed opportunity to not do anything here, but I think we should provide some feedback to make this the best we can. Now, with that said, I think that's my best plug for why we'd want to do it. Can we guarantee there's going to be a return on an investment? No one knows what's going to happen with development in the next, how many years is this open? Another 15 years? 20?
At least about 17, 18.
Okay, close to 20 years. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen in the out years, but letting it look old and tired certainly isn't going to help anything. I do have some concerns with cutting off access around the Clark and even to the north by Life Storage and the Goodyear. If we modify this for the Clark station, I think it's going to end up driving more traffic into that northernmost curb cut on Port Washington Road. That's actually the most dangerous spot because you've got people turning off of Donjas onto Port that aren't expecting someone to cut across right in front of them. I've seen that happen frequently. I drive through there a couple of times a day. That can be a challenge there. So I think we really ought to study that closely before we go off and remove access points. And I know we think we can drive around the back of the Clark or the Goodyear station off of Donjas Bay, but almost no one knows that exists, and it's actually almost impossible to get around without driving back onto Life Storage now that the parking there is all choked off. You can't get through that property on the driveway that's dedicated to the Goodyear any longer. And I take my cars there frequently. So that too is a challenge I think we have to grapple with. The one up by Culver's, that is a real concern from a safety standpoint, and I think that one's warranted and will help ease the confusion. You've got 3 or 4 entrances to basically the same spot, all in one location, and that one I can wrap my head around. I think the property owner of the Brixmore is even in support of that one, and we met with them out there sometime at the end of last year. I think it was November. But I do have some concerns around those medians near the Port Washington Donjas Bay intersection as well. And with that, I'll pass it over to Alderman Boucher, who is next in line.
Thank you. This was a great discussion. Definitely agree with all the comments being made so far. Actually, a quick question with medians, because actually I completely agree, especially Donjas Bay Road is one lane. So if 2 cars are making a turn and the first car is going to go into the gas station, the second car might not realize that, and we will have an increase in accidents in that intersection. I think it's Copymaster and there's a daycare. Is it the same one that goes past Goodyear, or is it on the other side of?
That's further to the north. I can pull it up on the main plan, but that should not be impacted by anything.
So I was just wondering, because there would be no way to get in if that was closed off.
So that's going to be. Let's see. one more up. No, it's let's see where we are. No, it's the next one. It's here, right? Right. Or is it this one? No, it's got to be this one where it connects. Are we missing this one? Because for yeah, I'm not sure if this is the one or not, but it will not impact the current traffic pattern in front of that building right now. There's an access point right now where you can get into that. In fact, that's Life Storage can use that to get around to their backside. There's still an opening for that on the north end of Life Storage.
Okay, thank you. And then second, with these medians in place of what exists, how does that affect the actual width of the driving lanes from curb to medians? Is that going to be exactly the same as it is today, or is that going to be decreased?
It's the same. We're not looking to go outside the footprint of the actual medians that are currently out there.
Thank you. And then third question, Commissioner Parrish, I think touched on this, and this is my question is, you had the ad hoc committee, Hardwood Engineering, got feedback from businesses. I'm curious, or sought feedback for the residents and the businesses there. Was it actually like going and contacting each one of those businesses, because they're the ones that are there day in and day out? And I assume that if we just went in and made a project, even though we've had good recommendations, they're going to say afterwards, this is not working out right. So
We didn't get to that level at this point. We first sent the notice out to the ones affected by the median openings. And then after, once we get feedback from the council and we come up with a different plan, then we'll send out a wholesale notice to the rest of the residents. But we didn't do that yet because we didn't have a finalized plan at that point.
Alderwoman Schneider, or Commissioner Schneider, sorry.
I think the obelisks, or I guess I would call them, really need to be better defined before I can say whether they're aesthetically pleasing. I think the lighting might help them some, but I think that the whatever kind of dimensionality or signage is going to be the key to making those look attractive. I'm just wondering how you balance the. I notice there's a lot of concrete surrounding the plantings, and again, we always are worried about maintenance, and that does keep the weed whacking and lawn maintenance down. But I'm just wondering about the amount of water these plantings will need, which is also a task that needs to be done by somebody when they're surrounded like that by concrete. I guess is somewhat similar to what Alderman Strelchik was concerning with just the viability of some of these trees with the impervious surface surrounding them. And I have a little bit the same concern with the plantings and the need for city staff to be watering frequently, because that will kind of be a heat sink and make it hot and potentially dry there with not much dirt to concrete ratio.
Yeah, definitely a harsh environment. I will attest to that we will have to be very careful with our species selection, in that these are all hardy plants and can tolerate salt. As far as the concrete, once we get into the construction details and the way we install the plants, it will have to be excavated out so there is enough soil mass. And in all areas where possible, I kept enough mass, enough width, so that if there are trees in that area, they will be able to grow and get to the full potential. If you stick them in narrow areas, they're going to be stunted. And in the really narrow areas, the problem areas, it's more ornamental grasses that can really take a tough beating and can be cut down in the winter and grow back. So concerns are all valid, and the locations and plant species will all be thought through so that we can address those concerns. The main watering period, so we won't have any annuals that will need to be watered daily. We can do perennials in all those pots, and even shrubs and evergreens. And the main period will be that first 3 to 4 months where they need to be watered a lot. But after that, those plants should be able to survive on their own with just the rainwater, unless we have a really bad drought.
Thank you.
Commissioner Strelchek.
Just really quick, Mequon Road, this is falling under this project. I know that if we didn't put the Highland Road interchange in, the DOT was going to do a complete overhaul of that intersection. And with the savings that we allowed for at that one location, are they contributing anything to any of the intersection reconstruction with the highway?
I don't think and Krista can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they are doing anything beyond, this is the intersection here. I don't think they're doing anything beyond this point here. This intersection pretty much, I think, stays as is. They're widening this out a bit, but I think the intersection itself doesn't change, at least from the construction plans I saw, unless you have something.
There are some impacts to the west. Jack's correct about the intersection at first, but there are some median improvements and modifications to the west of the intersection.
Is it within reason to just even ask if they would entertain participation on something to the south? I mean, we're correcting a traffic pattern. We're reconstructing that median due to the fact that
To the south, but then that's the county, not the state.
That's Zaka County's road, not the state's.
when I talked to DOT when we were looking at the Highland Road interchange, and we talked about the resident access specifically into Newcastle, and they said they would be willing to look at how that traffic pattern was and safety and assess that. I think that's since gotten lost in conversation. But my understanding is they might have had some more reaching power. So just something to put on the radar and just simply ask. With regard to the trees, we may want to consider concrete pavers, because I know studies show that those concrete pavers do allow rainwater to go through them, so it's less of an impervious surface, which might actually support their ongoing growth and just the overall maintenance of that area. And I don't think you get a lot of weeds through there with the way that they construct them. So something to consider.
So maybe a good question to ask the state regarding Mequon Road is if they're doing medium improvements to the west, maybe they could make them look a little bit like this. If they're going to rebuild them anyway. I'm sure there'd be a slight cost delta, but
Not sure if you know, but because of the grade differential, most of them are concrete.
yeah, I can't remember where anything with green stuff in it pops back up, but it is probably, is it Market Street? Is it that far?
They don't go all the way to Market Street, so it's within the influence of that section, really just to the west, as they're looking at like the turning cues for.
Not envisioning
I'm
it right
sorry,
offhand.
you are correct. I think the first green median is west of Market.
Okay, so it's beyond the scope of the state's project. Okay.
Yeah, and then
Congrats.
just one comment on Commissioner Parrish's thoughts and feedback from the business community. I ran a business on Port Washington Road for 15 years, was there during the reconstruction phase. And the overall sense and pulse within that business community was that was kind of an unfinished project. And I know I've had resident feedback on Mequon medians and what are we going to do to actually put some trees in somewhere. So, at minimum, the treescaping, I'm really excited to see, mirroring what Mayor Nervins shared about Mequon Road. We've had similar feedback on that we put landscaping in there and that died, had never been replaced or really maintained to the level that it was initially hoped for. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this can go and reiterating that if we can go north, great, bonus.
Commissioner Gephardt.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You couldn't see
no,
his hand raised up behind
I
you.
couldn't see it. Sorry about that, Bill. I just wanted to say the same thing as the mayor said about the District 7 particularly, which I know better than District 8. They have long-standing concerns with what they perceive as kind of a neglect of that area on southern, at least, Port Washington Road. And the other thing is just a question, what constitutes the maintenance of that? How did it end up being 60 plus nearly $70,000 a year, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure, we actually included a table at the end to kind of go through where we otherwise went. We contract for the majority of the medians, both on Mequon Road and in the business park, as well as a portion on Cedarburg Road. So we contacted that contractor and otherwise asked if we were to add this span, given the improvements, what those costs would be. So a portion of it was to address the watering. We don't have the means to do that with our own equipment. So there were the median. We don't mow any of that right of way right now. So a portion of it for that. A good portion of it is for plant material that we anticipate having to replace on an annualized basis due to plant turnover and things. But then it also gets into some capital funding for eventual replacement of things like the pots and the other mechanisms. We actually wouldn't likely be in favor of pavers just because of the freeze thaw. They become so unsettled like we otherwise have on Cedarburg Road. So we were more of an advocate of the concrete as it relates to that. But there are hours for the string trimming. We're almost tripling the number of light fixtures out there, so there are energy costs as it relates to that. We did use We Energy's most recent costs for energy efficient fixtures, not the ones that they'll be replacing. So there should be at least some cost savings for that. And then just other elements, including the weed control, mowing, string trimming, and tree maintenance that we otherwise anticipate.
So as it stands along that same stretch, what is our annual cost?
Zero. It's the counties. We don't do
Oh,
anything.
that's right.
That's part of why it's so bad.
Now I'm
Right
reminded why it's such a big difference. Okay.
Right now, the county is supposed to take care of everything. Notice I said supposed to. They aren't the most responsive to lawn mowing and other things along that stretch. So now we get blamed for it anyway. We'd just be taking responsibility for it. And Commissioner Giral had a question.
I'm gonna be pretty quick on this.
We haven't forgot about you.
I'm gonna be pretty quick on this. I'm looking at your renderings, and you've got these asymmetrical pieces in there. I drove around my neighborhood here the last couple of days, and I got snowplows knocked down the mailboxes, and they hit the concrete, and you got salt on everything, and is this going to be a problem for the plows? And when the plow is hitting on these pots and these concrete structures, and how do you get the snow out of there? Plus the salt getting pushed on it. These are things you should take a look at it, because I got a couple down mailboxes, and they're just coming. There's nothing to go around. They just hit them. So you might have some problems with your plowing in the wintertime when we get some snows.
Yes, great comment. And we did try to take that in consideration where we had the space to inset everything so that the snow could be windrowed on either the lawn or the concrete band. And the image we're looking at now is a little bit tighter, but for the most part, we have either a 6 or 8 foot patch of lawn, a band of lawn, and then that 4 foot concrete band too. So there is a buffer from the back of the curb in most areas. I will take a look at all the elements to make sure that they're inset enough so that the plow has room to push the snow.
Now, Commissioner Gebhardt.
Thank you. I'm going to make my comments brief, but I want to pile on just a couple of comments that have already been made, just to really make sure that we kind of hit on this, a couple of these points, in my opinion, for you to consider as we move forward. The first one is just overall the general concept. I'm in support of the concept for 2 main reasons. One, I do think that this section, primarily the southern section, is a bit tired, as the mayor mentioned. The other piece on that is very often as those coming from the south are coming to the north into Mequon, they choose to come off of Mequon Road. And now with the new off-ramp that's going to be coming on Port Washington Road, I do feel that that's going to go ahead and divert some of the traffic that would otherwise go all the way to Mequon Road and bring them in on the southern end of Port Washington Road. So that's one comment I wanted to make. The other one is certainly I'm in the boat of making sure that we understand what the maintenance costs are moving forward. That's a commitment that we need to make not only for the duration of this TIF, but also for the duration past that as well. And then the last comment that I want to make is in regards to safety concerns. For those that go by the Clark Station there, that entrance on Donjas Bay Road is very close to the intersection. And very often the cars are backed up going east on Donjas Bay Road coming up to Port Washington Road. And it's very difficult to get into that entrance because it's blocked. So what might happen is if we eliminate those two other entrance points for those cars coming from the south, is that we may have cars that extend into the intersection and aren't able to get through in time. And that's going to create a potential safety concern moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think, has everyone got to speak? Wanted to speak? Just want to make sure we get our comments to staff so they can work those into the revised plan that I'm sure will come back before us soon. If there aren't, and I don't want to rush anyone, but we do have one more item to get onto, and we're a couple minutes behind. So seeing none, I think staff's got all the input they need. We'll move on to our last item at Committee of the Whole, which is a status update concerning the MT Trails Foundation proposal to install the off-road bicycle path along Highland Road between Rotary Park and the Ozaki Interurban Trail. Oh, good, we got handouts. Fantastic. You may have to push the button. Is it?
Now can you hear me?
That's perfect.
All right. I'm Lori Lorenz. I'm one of the founders of MT Trails Foundation. And the person handing out our handouts is Mike Van Treek. And he is our engineering liaison for our foundation. And you should have all received the packet, our 15 pages describing our MT Trails Foundation. I just wanted to hit on a couple of highlights. I know that we are pushed for time. But our foundation is a 501c3 that was formed in 2022 after initially being conceived in 2021 by a group of citizens in the Mequon Thiensville community. And we're an all-volunteer group led by our current board of directors. We have two key goals in our bylaws. One's to develop and support a system of family-friendly bicycling and walking connecting off-road trails throughout the Mequon and Thiensville communities. And the other is to provide non-motorized alternatives for transportation, recreation, personal health, and well-being. So in the packet, we had how we are achieving these goals, and I'll pass by that. But I did want to make sure you knew our efforts that we've done to date in the last year and a half. We've created community awareness and support with our foundation pop-up tents and tables, which hopefully you all have seen throughout the area. We've obtained letters of support from all facets of the community, which I did attach in Exhibit B. In 2022, we actually interfaced at 12 community events using 80 volunteer hours, and just to get the word out about the foundation and what we're trying to achieve. And we sought input from the community regarding desires for trail placement, and this was begun with questionnaires that were distributed at our pop-up tables. And we are also in the process of talking with homeowner associations of the numerous subdivisions in the community for their needs for potential off-road trails. We have sought funding for the creation of our first project, which is the Highland Road Bike Spur, through grants and donations, and that includes a Federal Transportation Alternatives Program grant that we were granted on August 30th for $988,000. And that was supported to apply for that grant by the City of Mequon last March. We developed an informational website for transparency, and the handouts that you have the website in our brochure. That's an informative brochure from last June we put out. And then a little more updated is on the back page of the Mequon Thiensville Community Foundation newsletter last year that explains our project as well. So, and you can go to the website on their landing page to learn more. And we did establish our relationship with the Mequon Thiensville Community Foundation. They've been around since 1999, and so they have allowed us to use their website for their landing page, as well as for donations, which they keep in restricted funds in their deposits. We have formed a supportive relationship. We've been working with the city and village government, community businesses, and citizen stakeholders, as well as the joint Mequon-Thiensville Bike and Pedestrian Way Commission. So we're trying to get a very collaborative environment going. And so our first phase is the Highland Road Bike Pedestrian Spur. And Kristen, thank you for putting that up. On the screen is the tentative layout. We have actually hired an architect, and we've completed topographical surveys, wetland delineations, path alignments for both sides of Highland Road, and talking with significant landowners in the city of Mequon. And at this point, we are focusing on the north side in the city right-of-way. And to note, the spur will be a private path within the city of Mequon's right-of-way, which will be completely funded at no cost to the city of Mequon. And we will have a dedication agreement once that is done. MT Trails will be responsible for the maintenance and snow removal of the spur through a designated endowment for at least 10 years, and then we'll reassess where the endowment is for future funding of the maintenance. And it is in alignment with the joint Mequon-Thiensville Bike Pedestrian Way Commission plans. So I can go into a little detail about this spur. It's 1.5 miles, and it will connect the interurban trail with the Rotary Park, which is one of our most active parks. It, especially with the new, the busier road with the new intersection going in, it will be a very added asset to enable people to come from all the way from the city town center up the interurban trail and over to the park and it will extend the usability of that park, as well as enhance the ability for pedestrians and bikers to get out into our beautiful community. It will be a 20-year quality path, 12-inch deep aggregate and 10-foot wide paved path. And it will be similar to the interurban trail, which just turned 20 years and now is needing maintenance. So it will be a high quality path. We felt that was very important to make sure that we do that aspect so that we don't have cracks the first year or two and have to worry about that. So we do have a 60% design that's already set to go. Because of the TAP grant, we do have a June 30th deadline to have a 100% design specialist contract signed. And so we wanted to bring you up to date on what this is and field any questions.
Thank you. With that, I'll kick it back over to the commission and see if there's any questions or feedback. Alderwoman or Commissioner Schneider.
I just wanted to say thank you for all the volunteer work that has been put into this project. It's really inspiring to see what people can do when they get together. And I understand you've coordinated some with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, but from time to time I read from staff reports that there was another overall bike plan for this community that this is separate from or didn't communicate with well. And I'm not saying anything against this plan at all, but I just wanted to understand how this fits in with the overall plan for Bike and Pedestrian Way in Mequon-Thiensville.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question because, and actually the Bike and Pedestrian Way Commission is in the process of hiring a consultant to look at off-road possibilities throughout the community. And we are going to work closely with them on that. That commission plan was 2010 to 2030, so it is 15 years old. And, well, not quite, but, and a lot has changed with the needs of the community and the, as far as having accessibility
for bikers and pedestrians than was back in 2010. And so that's one reason it wouldn't have been in the 2010, possibly the Bike Commission's report. But we are working closely with them now to moving forward to make sure that is.
As it's been explained to me, the Bikeway and Pedestrian Bikeway Commission's plan is out of date. It's going to be updated, I think, this year. And this is something we'll see more of in the revised plan. This is just a little bit ahead of the revised plan, so it's a little out of sequence. That's hence the confusion, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Strelchak.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for everything you do for our community. Projects like this, big projects that come up that, we don't expect you to do, but we really appreciate when you bring the community together to help fund things like this. I'm an avid bicyclist. I'm slowing down a little bit compared to where I used to be, but my mission's always been a family-friendly and a kid-friendly community, and I think that any opportunity that we have to connect the interurban trail to the parks is huge. We're in the process of reviewing what goes on with the pool. I know one of the rumored possibilities is that we could put it in Rotary, but one of the objections were how the kids get there. This would solve that for us and give us another place that we could at least consider. I know tradition has it here, and I'm respectful of that, but this really opens up a lot in the area. I know that we're hoping to get pickleball courts at Rotary at some time in the future, and for people to ride their bikes to Rotary to participate in a variety of athletics and entertainment events would just be huge. So again, thank you. I have zero objections and absolutely love the plan.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hancher.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time and effort. This is my 30th year in Mequon, and when I moved out here to Mequon, the only way you get anywhere was a car. And so I live in Huntington Park, and we have bike paths that go all the way to Mequon Road, and this is just another piece of that puzzle to make the community a closer knit community that we can get to places without a car and to make it a place of destination. So thank you. I'm full support of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gebhardt.
Yes, and I'd like to just echo those comments as well. Thank you so much for all your hard work. Absolutely love the vision. The packet you put together was very comprehensive. Just a couple of things that came to mind, and this is more in a respectful way, right? Looking a little bit more down the road. Has consideration been given as far as, and I'm asking this, maybe part of this out of ignorance, but, if in the event there was an accident, I know that, the city is trying to relinquish any sort of liability as it relates to this, and the foundation is certainly, it seems, willing to pick that up. Is there any concern or consideration? Do you need to get insurance? Have you looked at that? What happens if somebody gets hurt? And then the second piece that I would have on that, as it relates to the restricted funds, I believe that you're setting up an endowment for the maintenance. Should we be thinking more long term? Because I think the last thing that the city needs or wants is really to have to pick that up at some point in time down the road. It's a great idea, great concept, but certainly it's something that needs to be maintained for, generations to come. And so how do we make sure that that's in place to be able to do that? So those would be my two comments or questions.
Thank you. Yes, we have talked with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation about our insurance needs, and they are looking into it for us. I can't believe that they had not been asked that question before. But we will have general liability insurance and, of course, officer and liability insurance. But we are looking into that piece. And the second point for the endowment, we are planning on having it into perpetuity, but we also wanted to be realistic and wanted to say at least 10 years, and then we will move forward from there and assess and maybe do a fundraiser to get that endowment back up so we can continue the maintenance, because our vision is to have more than just this 1.5 mile path.
Commissioner Parrish.
Hi, thank you. Welcome. Appreciate you being here. I think my main question relates to the bridge that there's a there's a bridge in your plans, and I know this from experience. I have a bridge in my district that is starting to fail, and there's a lot of, it has all to do with the footings and the foundation of it, and if this is eventually going to be the city's, it's very expensive to replace.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know that the foundations and footings to that bridge are top notch.
We will make sure that it is. That's
Yeah.
the plan, and it's
Like simple
that's the
wood
one reason we wanted to
pylons
do.
may not survive the thaw of winter has
Yeah.
been kind of our lesson learned. So
Thank you. We will
Um,
definitely
yeah, thank you.
assess that.
I guess oh yeah, go on.
Right here. Can you hear me now? Okay. Regarding that bridge, there's a possibility that if we can fill that in, extend that culvert, we may not need it. So those are a part of the things we're going to be looking at between now and the 100% plan to try to minimize any maintenance items, especially that item.
Thank you. I hope if you need any support from the city, I think that's in everyone's long-term interest. And my colleagues touched on perhaps the process about how we got here. I have been hearing about this through various committee meetings. I know that maybe moving forward, the communication with our staff will be more coordinated so that we can achieve a more cost-effective and mutually beneficial result. We do have the Bike and Pedestrian Commission, and I think we should all put our full support behind this organization. And moving forward, I think anything you guys come forward with should have the approval of the and blessing of the commission. So you guys got to work hand in hand moving forward. It feels like you've realized that now.
Yes.
Don't take those comments to detract from how appreciative we are of what you guys have done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any further comments? If not, I think those comments are a nice segue into maybe we could outline what next steps are, both on your end and on the city's end. Ultimately, we'll need a agreement for the approval to do something in the right of way. So that's maybe a question for both sides of the room. Kristen can go first. Yeah.
Sure, I will. Staff outlined a number of the terms and conditions that will be addressed, much of which Lori outlined here, just in terms of memorializing what those terms are for the construction, operation, and long-term maintenance. Because it is the city's right-of-way, we'll need to designate what they're allowed to do without a permit versus what requires a permit. We've also offered that while they will be fiscally responsible for the maintenance of the trail that may include crack sealing or reconstruction, that we would be willing to otherwise leverage our contracts that we issue on an annual basis. So being able to establish some general framework as to how that would be addressed so that we don't have to worry about either a subsequent MOU in the future or other mechanism for how to address that. And then it'll just go through, again, defining what the foundation's responsibilities are versus what the city's rights are and how that relationship will work. This is modified from how this was presented last year, March. Historically, the city has performed the local sponsor function for these state municipal agreements. So we've been the ones to actually hold the contract and we've been the ones to actually sign the grant, but the WISTOT has otherwise changed and allowed MT Trails to do so. So among other things, the city won't operate as the bank either. So that's good news for us as it relates to getting out of the grant administration business. So that will be a portion of what was originally outlined to be in the agreement that will no longer apply.
Thanks for that update. Anything to add from the MT Trails side? Okay.
No.
I think that does it. We look forward to hearing back from you. And with that, I think we need a motion to adjourn Committee of the Whole. Wait a minute. Am I missing a second?
To adjourn.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. We'll now